So let's read this one. Even with the Temptations ads, it's giving me cat treat ads, which is probably pretty actually on par. But yeah, okay. This is an interesting topic. It also sounds like there's like a YouTube video there. This is talking about Blizzard's making a huge change to World of Warcraft. Combat add-ons will be eliminated, with new features coming to replace some of their functions. Okay, this is a pretty big deal. All the details on Blizzard's planned changes to World of Warcraft add-ons, which will end support for the MMO's most popular mods. Okay, so this is very interesting. What's up? What's up? World of Warcraft senior game director Ian Hazzikostas dropped a bomb in Blizzard's broadcast today, one that many suspected would someday hit. At an undetermined point in the future, WoW will stop allowing add-ons to read combat events or auras. Currently, WoW's most popular mods, including all damage meters, oh wow, boss encounter information systems such as deadly boss mods or bigwigs, and almost all weak auras, use these hooks to show information on screen. Okay. For some character classes and specializations, the mods are almost required to play at a high level, where necessary information about the character and target are impossible or almost impossible to see using just the in-game tools and UI. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, we don't need this, right? Hazzikostas said that Blizzard will build functionality into the game to cover many of those uses starting in patch 11.1.7. The PTR for that patch will go live soon, TM. Okay. The objective, he said, is to eliminate mods that make computational decisions about how players should interact with different encounters. Okay. So popular raid weak auras from Liquid and Northern Sky auto-assign players to certain locations and duties in raid fights, for example. Right. Remember that. Hazzikostas said that causes designers to make those fights ever more complex to compensate and keep them challenging. It's an arms race where mods cause designs to change, which then pushes players to use more mods. So you look at the dungeon journal and you're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and maybe half of it doesn't even matter because the add-ons are going to handle it for you. That's not a great place for things to land. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. You look at the dungeon journal and you're scrolling, right. So the Wowhead article, yeah. But I feel like the Wowhead and Icy Veins are just trying to make a synopsis of this. Is that correct? So we'll just read this. Blizzard's objective is to build the functionality that players need, then turn off mod access to read live combat logs and events. Or maybe they're basing it off of just this video. And then these are just all different synopses of the video. Oh, I see. Maybe we should just react to the video. But we'll get the information first. That's fine. Blizzard's objective is to build the functionality that players need, then turn off mod access to read live combat logs and events. The new built-in functionality will include damage meters, customizable additions to the new cooldown manager, nameplate improvements, raid encounter information presentation, and boss ability timelines. That's interesting. Hey, that's really neat. So they're going to try to build DPS meters and like cooldown management, nameplate improvements, all this kind of stuff just in the game in general. Hey, that's pretty neat. He addressed several questions in the video, which we've reorganized here. Will this eliminate damage meters or combat logging, either in-game or on sites, such as Warcraft logs? He said, sort of. Interesting. WoW will still generate the combat log, and it can still be read on a delayed basis. Blizzard built in the ability to delay combat log reporting a while ago, and it's that version that sites such as Warcraft logs use for the after-the-fact reporting. Interesting. Okay, so this would definitely, it's not only going to make it so you can't track enemies' cooldowns in Arena, it's going to make it so that it won't be like, like as soon as somebody press Warbreaker, right? Interesting. You actually have to pay attention. But I wonder if they'll make the animations like more obvious and the sounds more obvious. Interesting. Damage meter mods. The single most popular type of add-on in WoW, according to Hazzikostas, will no longer function at all. Wow. Still, the large majority of players have a damage meter add-on installed, and so that indicates they still want to see that information. Yeah. In any world where we're going to limit some of the abilities of add-ons to do real-time combat and event tracking, we need to provide a damage meter solution of our own. Yeah, for sure. Blizzard's plans include measuring damage and healing, but also factors such as interrupts and unavoidable damage, as some mods do now. It'll have the advantage of being from the canonical source, he said. Okay. What about rotational helpers, such as Hekili? I think I've heard of that. Again, Blizzard plans to develop its own, with a rotation assistant function in 11.1.7 that will highlight the next abilities or next ability the player might want to cast based on their characters and what's happening in combat. Surprisingly, Blizzard will also debut a one-button version of Rotation Assist that will automatically change to the next ability needed and be cast with a single button press. Right, so we've heard about that. That option is intended to help those who are learning, people with accessibility needs, or those who just want to more casually play the game. Right, so we could talk about this topic separately. The TLDR for me is all three of those reasons are a good enough reason to have it in the game. All good, in my opinion. A small penalty will be added to the global cooldown for using one-button rotation, but not the rotation. Hold on. A small penalty will be added to the global cooldown for using the one-button option, but not the rotation assist highlights. Oh, okay. So as long as you aren't actually using the one-button thing, if it just highlights it for you. Rotation assist will attempt to compensate for the environmental factors, such as how many mobs are in range, what direction the player is facing. Like, that's very interesting. Okay. How are raiders supposed to handle the fights of incredible complexity, such as Brood Twister in Erevar Palace, where two players each had to clump on several different egg clusters in a matter of seconds without some assistance coordinating? We did that boss on Mythic. Got him down. Hazzikostas says that encounters like those would have been balanced differently if players didn't have weak ores available to them. Yeah. Blizzard might have given more time for players to get to the eggs, for example, or simplified the mechanic. These changes will require both building out new functionality in the game and changing the way the team approaches the design. Okay. We can probably remove a couple mechanics, but still keep the same level of challenge, he said. He gave the example that a debuff that affects everyone in an encounter might only need to affect a few. If players weren't using mods to make it simpler, I guess. The goal is to make it is not to make it easier. The goal is to make it less complex. Okay. Our goal here is to preserve the challenge, and we know we'd have to design encounters differently in some cases. Gotcha. What about the mods that don't affect combat decisions? Blizzard will try to preserve mods that are oriented towards aesthetic, display options, role-playing, quest helpers, and some other ways to change what you see on screen, particularly out of combat. Okay, cool. What about mods that change how abilities are displayed based on procs and character actions or track those effects? Those mods are largely based on the combat log, so they will no longer function. Okay. But Blizzard plans to build out the recently debuted cooldown manager with more customization starting in 11.1.7, including picking what's shown. Very cool. It's super fair to point at some specs like Outlaw Rogue and ask, how is anyone really supposed to execute this perfectly with the base UI, he said. Those are not reasonable tests for us to be posing to our players without providing the information to do it correctly. We either need to provide the information or simplify the mechanic, or both. Okay, that's cool. What about mods that add audio cues? Yeah, those are pretty nice. Audio prompts are something that are super valuable to people. Yep. He said the team plans to add support for that, including to the cooldown manager. Many people would appreciate being to have an audio prompts tied to certain things or procs firing. Yeah. Audio cues are sometimes needed now because the team hasn't always done a good job of telegraphing mechanics and their impact, particularly in hectic situations such as Mythic plus difficulty, dungeon groups, he said, right? Blizzard plans to make improvements there as well. If a mob is casting something extremely dangerous, it should have hyper-visible to players. Yeah, interesting. So that's for PvE though. I don't know if you can set that up for PvP. They shouldn't all just look indistinguishable on screen, he said. Another popular mod, GTFO, makes an obnoxious noise when the player is standing in something damaging. Right now, that is needed because the game doesn't give enough cues, right? It's not clear when you're standing in something, and so I need GTFO or some other sound effect. It should be obvious. We should fix that on our end. Cool. How quickly should players expect to see access turned off? We need to ease into this, he said. The team will incorporate the new functionality, listen to players, and when the developers are satisfied with what remains, is largely unwanted automation for the players. They want to return to the players. Okay, let me read that again. And when the developers are satisfied with what remains, okay, they are satisfied that what remains is largely unwanted automation for the players. They want it to return to the players. Okay, problem solving, combat, communications, whatever. Then they'll turn it off, right? Whatever. We want to keep chipping away at those things and hopefully get to the point where really the only difference between what we are offering and what powerful add-ons can do is that small subset of computational problem-solving stuff, at which point we can move forward. Okay. Those improvements may require building in more mod tools, such as improvements to the ping system, he said. Yeah. How set is Blizzard doing this? Nothing here is locked in. My hope today is to begin a conversation about moving in that direction. What areas are welcome, what areas we have more to do, convince the community, what areas we're working on, or wrong on. At the end of the day, the game belongs to millions of players. We'll be reading, we'll be listening. This is a long path ahead. I'm curious to kick off the conversation and hear how people feel about it. Okay, interesting. So I think this is a very, very good thing. I think this is a great idea in general to sort of begin to pare down the sort of add-on bloat, the add-ons arms race. I think that making the game more available and accessible to play just out of the box, so to speak, is definitely one of those things that makes WoW more approachable to new players, which is super important, and makes WoW a little bit less of a pain in the butt for returning players, and makes WoW a little bit less complex, so you're constantly having to update weak auras and all this stuff for players who have been already playing a ton too. So I think that having more information about a raid encounter can be kind of fun, so you're dialed in, but I don't necessarily think that just following a weak aura makes me feel like I'm a better player. It can help you learn mechanics, I guess, and it can sort of tell you where to go, but I feel like that, I don't know, I don't think that makes me feel like I'm like playing the game as much. So I personally am not against it. I definitely feel like there will probably be some like uncomfortable times during the transition, for sure. But if they take it, you know, at a pace that makes sense, I think it could be okay, and I think it could definitely lead WoW into an overall better place. And you don't see an influx of new players unless they intend to put on the Game Pass, which I would hate. I think that they're gonna do that. I think we talked about this on the podcast a little bit. I think this is definitely like leading to that. I think this is a big part of that, making World of Warcraft more accessible and welcoming to a crop of new players. That could come from the Game Pass. I think that's actually really cool. We will see, though. We will see. I haven't never played WoW day in my life. If it came to Xbox, I would play it. Yeah, I mean, isn't Game Pass available just on PC too? Yeah. I think it'll be sick. These are not going to happen for a while, though, right? I don't even know if it will be a big difference between like now and the next grand finals, but maybe. No, I think that anything that makes the game more accessible and approachable, and anything that brings more players into the game to come back or new players to join for the first time is a plus overall for the game. So paring down add-ons in PvP, you're not going to be able to track people's cooldowns as much. You're not going to get like this big blaring alert when people pop cooldowns from your add-on. But what might happen is like when you use Warbreaker, your character yells and there's this big swirling effect and there's this big, you know, effect over somebody's head when you use Warbreaker. And that, honestly, like when I saw the new animation, I didn't love the new animation, but I was like, they're making this animation awfully flashy, so it's easy to see when it goes off for players, whether they're on your team or on the enemy team. And I think we're going to see more like that. We're going to see more sort of like big effects when people pop these cooldowns, so you can actually see it in the game and you hear it in the game. And I think that's going to be a big deal. And they might even build functionality kind of like big debuffs, right? Where like when somebody is using a cooldown, there's going to be a big buff above their head that they have a big offensive cooldown or a big defensive cooldown popped, which again, I think is actually even just good for the game. Things make more sense. Like even as a new player, when you're in a battleground and you see a warrior like pop avatar and they turn red and they're like, okay, that guy is a threat right now, and I need to CC them. Like, even though it's annoying to get CC'd on your cooldowns, it's actually a good thing that you can pick a target out of the pack and be like, they are doing something important right now. They're trying to use one of their big abilities. Or like when a Resto Druid, like, you know, turns into a big tree, like there's not really anything that you can do about it really, but at least you're like aware of it, right? Like, it's like, oh, they're doing a big cooldown right now. That's actually kind of cool, right? And it's cooler than an add-on telling it to you. So I think that that's actually a really good change. And we also could talk about the one button rotation thing. Again, I sort of gave you my TLDR opinion on that. I think, again, it's same thing, is if it makes the game more accessible for someone to get into, then I think it's a good thing. If it makes somebody who is just wanting to chill and just press one button, able to just like kind of farm mobs and chill, that's fine. It's all good. And it helps you learn your class. It helps people who have accessibility concerns more able to play the game, and that's also great. So I'm pretty much down with this kind of thing right here. I think it's very, very cool. Only be neat in PvP. I wouldn't want that in PvE. Like what? Like notifications when like bosses are about to do big scary stuff. I mean, like in Path of Exile, for example, you will recognize what bosses are about to do based on the voice line that they said, right? So there's like a one boss where like it's like he's like incineration. You know that mechanic is a certain thing, and you need to avoid that in a particular way, right? And it's like annihilation. That's a different mechanic, and so you'll learn the mechanics based off of like what the bosses say or do, right? And like their animations and their sound effects. That's much more immersive anyway, which is good, right? I think that's excellent. So I'm all for this, man. I think that taking some risks and doing things that help bring WoW along and make it a modern game that changes and evolves over the time is very important and very good to do. And these kind of things can make some players mad, but I mean, I think that it is a better step to pare things back than it is to let things continue to go crazy with add-ons. Truly, so I'm here for it, man. I think it's good. I'm excited for it. This is actually something I think is really cool. I mean, we're gonna be playing WoW anyway, but I'm all for this, and I think this is a very positive change, and I think it's gonna have a little bit of like growing pains probably along the way, but ultimately will make World of Warcraft a better game. So I'm here for it. I think it's really cool. What do you guys think? Yeah, I think the Game Pass thing would be also very fantastic too. WoW on Game Pass would be great. Again, for the reason of getting more players into the game. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to see a Draenei CDs over a Gnome? Perhaps, yeah, perhaps. If that's like actually how it works. I mean, you're once again, you know, smaller character model, having advantages in PvP has been a thing in other games before. But like, you know, if you hear a little gnome go, "Yay!" like whenever he's popping Warbreaker, or you know, you see like the big animation over your own head, or over their head even, or you see like a, you know, you could have like big scary debuffs on you be like a bigger animation or something like that. Like these are things that they're gonna have to work on, right? When you see it, like your like big scary debuffs could even show up on your cooldown tracker, like on your own character, right? So definitely is a thing. So for sure. Stone Mountain likes WoW, and he plays it off stream. That's cool. Nice. Very neat. Yeah. I think it's a good thing. There's a few on PoE2 that they messed up. Yeah. Well, they'll work on that. It's early access. But what I mean is I think PoE2 is a fine example of where you can have bosses telegraphing their mechanics in, like, you know, repeatable ways where, like, you can see the mechanic before it goes off, or they say something that you know that's going to be that mechanic. And I think that's pretty good. So, yeah. I think this is good. I think this is good. I'm excited for it. And we'll be keeping our eyes on it, for sure.